I just want to say again, I do appreciate you going on this call with me.
Yeah, no worries, man. Sorry, I couldn't really do anything last week. It's been crazy with like, right now, like, usually this is kind of like the slower time, typically, most years, anyways. That final month of the calendar year, it's like usually we have like basketball and hockey and football, like, but they're all kind of like either just starting or they're winding down. Whereas this year, we're getting ready for two out of three to begin, and then football is kind of like the Patriots had 2 games in 5 days.
Hmm.
So it's just been crazy planning for year end, but also next year. So sorry we couldn't get together last week, but yeah, we got time now. So why
Yeah,
the
it's
hell
all
not, right?
good. I had
Yeah.
finals last week, so it worked out for me.
Oh, great. Yeah, that works. All worked out then.
All right. When did you realize you wanted to become a sports writer?
Um, Probably when I was like 16 or 17. It was weird, right? Because like I didn't I didn't know I could write, and then I had teachers who told me that, hey, I was a pretty bad student, honestly, all things considered, but I had teachers who told me that I wrote papers pretty well. So they wanted to know if I wanted to write for the school newspaper, and I did it, and I really liked it. I think the first time you see your name in print, and people are talking about what you had written, it's pretty cool. So
Mhm.
I think that got the wheels kind of turning a little bit. And I was lucky in the sense that I grew up right when the internet was kind of exploding. So around that 2007 2008 range, where independent blogs were really starting to rise. So I started doing that, and I latched on with a couple of other companies, and kind of just kept leveling up, year after year, going to different websites, different magazines. Um, so it got serious probably around, I would say, 2012, 2013 is when I thought, maybe I can actually do this for a living. And that didn't manifest itself or really materialize until 2018 is when I got my first full-time writing job. So it was like a 10-year journey. But I would say around when I was a teenager is when it kind of first hit me.
Pretty cool. Were there any mentors that you would say was a key part of success?
Yeah, I definitely think you need people that help you out along the way, right? You need people that have your best interests in mind, but give it to you straight. They tell you what is, hey, this is realistic, this is unrealistic. So yeah, I had, my first teacher in school, Sean Landry, was huge for me. Just kind of, he kept me on a very sort of, he told me what I needed to do, but also what I couldn't do, and that was important to kind of have that person there who, if you acted out of line, they would tell you, and they would get your head on right. So he was huge for me. But then growing up, there was a guy I worked with at the New England Hockey Journal, which was a magazine based out of Milton, named Andy Merritt, and he was huge for me. Everything he did was just like, it was like having like a best friend, but also somebody who, again, would tell you, how you should do things, how you should approach interviews, how you should approach one-on-ones, confidential information, things like that. So that was big, right? To have that kind of a person who had been in the industry for a while, um, being that extra voice that you needed, to sort of
Mhm.
to help approach things from a different angle, or make sure you're doing it the right way. So those two people were huge for me. And then when I was with EEI before I went to the Sports Hub, Rob Bradford from EEI, he's their Red Sox writer, does their broadcast sometimes. He was huge as well, because again, that's another person who had been in the industry for about 2 decades,
Yeah.
and he was really helpful in terms of me finding my voice as a writer, and as a personality, and figuring out what I can do.
How important do you say making connections are for like young writers right off the bat?
It's important, but I think one of the big things you have to do while you're also maintaining that is understanding that people are people at the end of the day, not tools to get you ahead. Like, because I've met some people who it's they want to get connections, right? And they want to meet people, but they only want to meet people because they think it's going to help them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I was
so
saying.
so I think that's something that I've witnessed people do it the right way and the wrong way. Being
Mm.
around the industry now for almost 10 years, um, I've witnessed the good and the bad of people building connections, and And
Mhm.
so I think, it's more than just saying that you like someone's work, or you want to get to know them as a person. I think it's, you know, it's just getting to know them as a person, right? And so those
Yeah.
connections are big, but I find that it's more friendship than connection, right? At the end of the day,
Mhm.
and I think that um, that's something that needs to be on everyone's mind when they're talking to people or approaching people that whose work they admire, or who they want to get to know. It needs to not be selfish, motivation, if you will, to sort of get to know that person. And I do think that this, especially social media, allows us to have that more than ever, right? Like Twitter allows you to talk to your favorite writer, your favorite analyst, your favorite whoever, you know, drop the hat. I still feel, I still get that great feeling when I get a reply or a conversation started with someone I really respect in the industry. And I think that's it's never been easier to communicate, but our intentions have to be pure with those communications.
Mhm. Yeah, I can relate to that. The first intro I did was about a month ago. It was with Antonio Davis. I just reached out to him on Twitter. He
Mhm.
responded, and I got lucky enough to get an interview with him.
Oh yeah, that's great. I mean, it's that's the thing. The game has changed so much, right?
Hmm.
Just even the past like 10 years, like from when I first started, Twitter was like the new website. Now it's like, well, if you don't have a Twitter, that's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, so that part of it has been really fascinating to watch, and we're always trying to find out what the next thing is, right? Like the next thing we have
Yeah.
to be aware of, or notice in the industry. So it's never been easier to get in touch with those people, and obviously, I mean, if it works out, it's great, right?
Yeah. So I saw you've been writing for the Bruins for like over a decade now. Would you consider hockey like your favorite sport?
Well, yeah, I think when I first got in the game, I when I first started in high school, I was like, I don't know what I want to write about. I want to write about everything. So I did, when I was in high school, I wrote about all four sports, and even through college, I tried to write about as many as I could, and then I think I just kind of naturally progressed towards hockey because the first big break I had was with the hockey website.
Hmm.
And they gave me a press pass going every Bruins game, locker room access, after the game, interviewing players, and so I kind of naturally sort of started building myself as a hockey writer. When I went to EI, I did Patriots and Celtics as well, but mainly I was their hockey guy. And so I've embraced it. It's both it's a positive and a negative. I think that when you're around one team for so long, people start to pigeonhole you as, okay, you only do this. When it's like, no,
Hmm.
I can do anything I want to do. Like, I watch every game that's on, no matter the sport. I'm at practices, Celtics camp. I'm at, we're doing all this. So it's good and a bad thing. I've had opportunities that haven't gone my way because they look at me as a hockey guy. But I've also had opportunities because of my involvement in hockey. So I would say that it's both good and bad. I never put ceilings on myself in terms of like, oh, I'm just a hockey guy. It's definitely my favorite sport. But I don't think I ever want to sit here and say that that's the only thing I can do. But I think naturally, yeah, it's the one I've had the most attachment to, the one I've watched the most, played the most. So that's the one where I feel most comfortable. But yeah, I mean, anything you cover in sports is kind of a dream, right? It's
Yeah,
like
that's true.
you kind of have to just embrace whatever role you're given, and for me, hockey has emerged as the favorite as a result of my work in it.
What's been your favorite part of working in the sports industry?
I just think that everything is different, right? Like every game is different, every season's different. I've had office jobs, I've had restaurant jobs, and it can be monotonous at times. And I think with sports, it's kind of like that creative freedom of not everything is going to be the same, right?
Mm.
And that's been the beautiful part of it. I also love just the crowds being part of that energy is really exciting for me. Versus when I would again when I'd work I had all these odd jobs, these weird desk jobs where every day was the same, right? And and,
Mm.
and those were tough. So I think that's what I've liked about it, the energy and how everything is different every day, really. So that's been awesome. That part of it's been great.
Yeah.
The schedule's a little crazy sometimes. Like you'll work a lot of nights, you'll work a lot of weekends, but just kind of, I think it all balances out with the energy, the atmosphere of it all, and the deadlines and everything. It keeps your heart going. It keeps the heart
Mhm.
racing. So that's been my favorite part of it for sure.
What has been your favorite? Like, do you have any moments that stick out as your favorite?
Yeah, I would say that the when you go back to 2013 after the Boston Marathon bombing, the Bruins were like the team in town, right? Like
Mm.
like they were in the playoffs basically, or the playoffs were about to start right when that happened. And the city kind of gravitated around the Bruins. There was so much emotion, so much energy in all those games. I would say that was a big one of my favorite moments. Just that 2 month run was really a blur looking back on it. I don't remember a ton
Mm.
about it because everything was moving so fast. But I really appreciated being a part of those crowds, being a part of that energy, that team. Really seeing them on a daily basis, all the work they were doing. Um, but beyond that, I would say one of my favorite moments was when I got hired full time because it was kind of like it was almost like my efforts felt worth it. Right, 9 years of 10 years of scraping by on part time blogs and self starter things. It was kind of like, all right, cool, we're here. So selfishly, that's my favorite as a person, but as a writer, definitely those championship teams or almost championship team in 2013. Being around that team every day was amazing. And
Mhm.
even in 2019, they come up a game short, but I'm at every home game. I'm on the road with them in Carolina for the third round. That was really that was great to just be a part of that as well.
Is there any moments with like a specific athlete that's been your favorite?
I think the first time I interviewed Mark Recchi was really cool for me because that was one of my favorite players growing up. I mean, NHL legend, Hall of Famer. That was great. Also, Yager in 2013 was a really cool one as well. Again, another legend of the game. Someone I didn't think I'd ever meet. And it's funny. I've been doing this now for so long that a lot of the players know who I am. At least with the Bruins, and so
Mhm.
they'll talk to me just about random stuff. And I think when Priest Bergeron's just having regular conversation with you, it's a really cool moment. Growing up a fan of the Bruins and a fan of hockey, it's these are guys that you grew up watching, and now you're talking with them in a professional setting. So that part of that's been really rewarding and really cool. It's funny, there were still athletes and players and coaches that you get starstruck by, right?
Mhm.
Like I got whenever I'd see Steve Eiserman was the GM of the Red Wings, and now he's GM of the Red Wings, supposed with the Lightning. But you share elevators with these guys, you talk with them, you're like, this is crazy, man. I remember watching you when I was a kid. I had your jersey at my house. So that part's been really great. Tom Brady press conferences, Bill Belichick press conferences. It's just totally different. It's something I didn't think I'd ever be lucky enough to do. So to have that experience has been really, really exciting and at times surreal.
Have you had any interactions with like non-athletes at the games, like famous actors, actresses?
There was a game where there was Retta, who plays Donna from Parks and Rec. She was at a Bruins game. She was in the locker room after the game.
Mhm.
That was pretty cool. Conor McGregor was at a Bruins game once. I didn't get to meet him because he had a big security entourage with him. But that was cool. Just seeing one of the best fighters in the UFC was 10 feet from
Mhm.
you and saying hi to everybody. That was great. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I think those interactions they're you don't expect them, right? So it's kind
Mhm.
of you almost don't remember them at times. Like Dak Prescott was in the Bruins locker room last year. Why was he in there? It's that becomes more of the story versus like, oh my God, it's Dak Prescott. It's like, why is he here? And then you find out his agent's from Boston. He's in town for the weekend. Whatever. So that part of it's pretty cool and unique. But it's weird, right? Like these guys typically, if a celebrity comes to the game, they're typically on the owner's box and they'll go in the locker room and then they're out of there. It's like it's like you hear rumors, oh, like they were here. Like there's a guy, who was it a couple of years ago? I think it was like John Travolta was like in the Bruins locker room randomly. We never saw him, but we heard he was there.
Right.
So stuff like that happens all the time, which is kind of weird. But I haven't met too many non-athletes in these situations.
I saw in July you took a break from writing for your mental health. Would you recommend young writers to make sure like mental health is one of the top priorities?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I think that that's one of these things that is becoming more widely accepted. That you're not going to feel great all the time. For me, it was a little bit of everything, right? With the pandemic going on, um, it was tough to just kind of sit inside and stare at the same walls every day.
Hmm.
And now we're on month 9 of doing that basically. But it was difficult at first, right? I mean, my way of life was very go go go. All the time I was always moving, I was always writing, um, going to different practices, different games, and then all of a sudden I was just stationary. I was sitting at home, and that was tough. I think it's important for people, young writers, anybody really, to prioritize their own health above everything else. I think that the society we live in is very fast moving. It's very fast paced. The work field that we're in is very fast paced as well. So you need to make time for yourself and make sure that everything you're doing is you know on point, is on 100%, or close to it, because you will eventually, if you don't take care of yourself, you will have that kind of crash landing. And that's kind of where I was landing
Hmm.
in July. It was just difficult. It was just difficult to sort of wrap my head around what was happening in the world, and also care enough about sports at the same time to do my job effectively.
Hmm.
So that was you need to take care of yourself at the end of the day, and I think that goes for anybody in any walk of life. But especially, I think, you know, the younger writers, the younger generation, we're all trying so hard, students, recent graduates, whoever, um, to make sure that they're putting themselves in the best situation, as an employee, as a candidate, as a person, that we often forget about how important it is to take care of our own bodies and minds. So I took a few weeks off. It was great. I had the support of my bosses. My company supported me as well. And they told me, "Hey, just get right." And that was beautiful, because they let me do that, and I came back, and the Bruins were back. They started their playoff games in the bubble, and I was back, and I felt recharged. Like that
Hmm.
was like I just, my job didn't really allow many vacations, so yeah, I just kind of, my mental health kind of fell by the wayside, because it was about working, it was about getting that day done, and to have that ability to take a step back and look at everything and analyze everything, it was important. It was definitely, I needed to do it for sure.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Doing well now. Are you excited for the upcoming seasons, the NHL and basketball?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, it's been a while. It's gonna be great that a lot of these. It sounds like they're all gonna be playing in their home stadiums. With probably not with fans to begin the year, but maybe that'll open as the season goes on.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, I mean, it was tough, right? I think it was tough watching the games in the bubbles, the Toronto bubble for hockey, and the Orlando bubble for basketball, just because it was just felt unnatural, right? And
Yeah, you're saying.
and we're getting a little bit closer to that sort of natural feeling with them being in their actual arenas. Again, fans, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there, but I think that's a positive, right? That's a good step. So I'm excited for these seasons. I'm excited for a season that's going to feel closer to the real thing,
Hmm.
versus the bubble. So yeah, it's going to be good. We're ready to go. I mean, on the website, we're pretty excited about this. Christmas or December 23rd for the Celtics, and we don't know about the Bruins yet, but we're pretty amped up, I think, to get this back going again, because it's without sports, I mean, it's our company's going to struggle. I mean, that's what we
Yeah.
do. So we're all excited about it. Hopefully, it's all safe for the players involved and whatnot. But really, couldn't be better timing, I think, in terms of what the world needs right now.
Mhm.
Is a little bit of normalcy, and this will get us back to it.
Are you going to be able to join like the press conferences online? Because most likely won't be in person.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So what we're looking at right now is that everything the Celtics are doing has been through Zoom.
Hmm.
Same for the Bruins right now. The Patriots, our Patriots writer gets to go to the games in the press box, but he doesn't go to the locker room after the game. They do all the stuff on Zoom from the facility. So what happens in that instance is that I think they all go to one centralized location, and if they have a question, they raise their hand and they ask it. But this allows those writers, because football, there's so much happening at all times. There's substitutions, and there's different formations, and you can't pick up everything on TV. So I have a feeling the Bruins are going to do something similar, and the Celtics are going to do
Mhm.
something similar for their seasons, where they're going to let the writers in, but everything we're going to do is going to be on Zoom from location. Um, so I imagine it'll be like that. You know, the press boxes are big enough at both arenas where they can
Mhm.
do this, and they're not going to put anyone in harm's way. So I imagine that'll be the case. I'm not 100% yet, but for example, you know, the Bruins, they had us, they allowed us to go to training camp during the restart back in July. It was a rotating basis, so they wouldn't let 50 reporters in, but they would let about 10 reporters in, and they'd let a few different ones in every day. So I imagine we'll do something similar for practices and for camp. But the games, I got a feeling will be let in, just not allowed locker room access, which makes all the sense in the world, honestly, given
Yeah,
everything
that's
that's
true.
happening right now.
Do you think those press conferences are going to be much harder online than in person?
I think there's an element of it's harder to do that all online, and
Mhm.
you know, a lot of times it's you don't maybe have the right tone, the right relationship with the person that you're asking the question because you haven't seen each other. You know, you haven't had that face-to-face daily interaction like you normally would. So that'll make things a little bit more difficult. Um, but honestly, I think that everyone's tired of Zoom and they have that Zoom fatigue. Um, you know, but I think we all understand it that we have to do it right now. So I think that it's difficult, but everyone is gonna do their best not to make it known how difficult it is. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah, I
Like
get
I
what you
think,
mean there.
yeah, like it's kind of like we're all trying our best, and we know it's not perfect, but it beats the alternative of sitting at home. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this sort of changes the dynamic moving forward when things do open up again and when we're allowed back in locker rooms. You know what changes? You know, are we allowed in locker rooms again, or do they just say that Zooms are what it is now? You know, I don't see that being the case, but I'm curious how everything's going to change now in terms of traveling, in terms of you know, writers being on location. You know, I know some writers who've already moved. They've moved to, you know, Western Mass or New Hampshire, and they're just going to do everything on Zoom because they don't think we're going to be in locker rooms for a while. So
Mhm.
you're already seeing some of the effects of what this change has meant. Um, but I do think that we're all just trying our best at the end of the day. So it hasn't been difficult. It has been easy, but I think everyone's willing to sort of make the sacrifices necessary to get these done and over with and to the best of their abilities.
That's true. Have you seen any like ridiculous questions? Like in baseball, they asked Walker Buehler after a loss why his pants were so tight. Have you seen any ridiculous questions like that?
Yeah, I think you know I think that those have almost become, you know, like for me example, like so for me it's hockey every day, right? Like that's sort of like the press conferences I'm in the most. It's just hockey.
Hmm.
And I think that what happens is that we get those questions during the Stanley Cup final and during like the later rounds because that's when the random reporters will come in who don't really like want to talk about the game. They want to talk about what the internet is saying. So we haven't experienced too many of those. I think the craziest question we got is that uh, somebody was like deleted a tweet or something like that, and they asked the player involved, "Why'd you delete that tweet?" And he's like, "Why are we talking about this?" You know what I mean? Like I think that was the closest we've had in hockey. But yeah, that Walker Bueller question was like nuts. I remember seeing that being like, because that was that in a World Series game or was that in
I was in the
the
playoffs. I want to say it was in the World Series.
yeah
It was the round before.
yeah, no matter when it was an important game,
Yeah.
right? And typically in those things, you only have about 5 to 8 questions that they let you ask before they wrap it up. So, you know, if I were like a beat writer for like the LA Times or whatever, and I saw that that was one of the questions being asked, I'd be pissed, man, because like that's like you know, you only have 8 bullets, right? You wasted one of them on that question. Um, so it's pretty. I mean, those guys are you know, listen, you got to take chances in journalism to ask questions that are going to be a little bit not controversial even because that's not really, but like take some chances, right? But that was one of those questions, man, where it was like wrong place, wrong time. They lose the game, you know, and you're asking about that. And I think that's what he said too. He was like, "We're not going to talk." He's like, "Bad
Yeah,
time to
he
ask that
did.
question," you know, like. So you'll get that every now and then, but it all depends who's asking it, right? Like if the team knows you, and if the player involved knows you, he's less likely to blow up on you like
Mhm.
Walker did, and rightfully so. But yeah, no, I haven't experienced too much of that. But again, that's just based on who and what I cover, versus the MLB or the NFL.
Yeah. Who's been one of your favorite reporters, writers that you've seen at games?
I think the best in the industry is in Boston. Is in ESPN. Mike Reese for the Patriots. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he's
I
the
know.
best.
I follow on
Yeah,
Twitter. Big
he's
Pats
the
fan.
best. He's the best reporter in the market, in my opinion. He's the nicest guy. He's somebody who I try to emulate in terms of like how I conduct myself, and when I see a new writer on the scene for the Bruins, I always try to make them feel welcomed. Let them know, hey, anything you need, let me know. Because I remember being them. I remember being that person, being
Mhm.
19, 20 years old and covering a team and being terrified, honestly, just terrified of everything. So he's great. I think Forsberg on the Celtics is really good as well. Um, Trying to think, Tom Curran from the Patriots beat is a great guy as well. So there's a lot. Trying to think like nationally, I really enjoy Pierre LeBrun, who does hockey stuff for the Athletic and for TSN in Canada. I think that he's really tapped into the league. And he's another one who I've had friends who have worked alongside him who tell me that he's a great guy. I
Mhm.
think that's a big thing, right? I think as you get involved in this industry more, you're going to learn that you gravitate towards the people who you hear are good people. You know, you never want to give your time or energy to someone who's a jerk.
Mhm.
And it's I think that the people in the industry, it's sarcasm is great, but being mean is kind of frowned upon. I guess that's how I look at it. I never want anyone to think I'm a dick. I always want to be friendly and engaging, and we can make jokes, but let's be normal people at the end of the day. So I really respect how those guys conduct themselves and how they write. And meeting Mike Reese was really cool when that happened, and Tom Curtin. Those were really cool moments for me. And um, it's interesting, sort of the change on the Bruins beat has been. I used to admire these guys, and I still do. I still want everyone to succeed and do well. But now it's like we're competition, right? Now it's like
Yeah.
we're trying to see who can have the best
Mhm.
story or the best,
Gotta be
you
the
know,
best.
yeah, exactly. So that's been a little bit different. But with the Patriots and the Celtics, it's more, I really respect these guys and I admire the way they look at the game. So it's easy for me to say I like their work and I like them as people because they're just, again, they're very welcoming and very friendly.
Would you consider Mike Reese, like one of the first writers you're like, I want to write like him, I want to be like him?
What's funny is I think that for me that was, we had a subscription to the Boston Herald, so I read a lot of Steve Buckley. I read a lot of Jerry Callahan. I think before he was like a radio guy, I thought he was a terrific writer. Um, and Felger, was with the Herald time, and now we work together. So that was kind of funny. Being around reading Felger growing up, and now we're coworkers. So that part has been really rewarding for me to kind of be able to pick their brain. Tony Maserati is another one where I grew up reading him when he was with the Globe. One of the best Red Sox beat guys there was. So being able to read those writers and say I want to be a little bit like them, and then meeting them has been great. So yeah, I would say the first writer that I read and said I want to do something like this. Um, that's a tough one. So I would say the Herald guys, just because I would read it every day. Um, Nationally, that's a little bit more tricky because I could never be a Bill Simmons, right? Bill Simmons can write 4,000 words on comparing a 1990s movie to an NBA team. I can't do that. I can appreciate it, but I can't do it. So there's that's tough. I just think nationally, you know, I was kind of coming up the same time a lot of those places were exploding. So for me, it was all newspaper guys. So again, Buckley, Felger, Maserati, those were kind of my go-tos. I would say nationally, Greg Wyshynski he was with the Yahoo at the time. Now he's at the ESPN as their hockey guy. He was somebody I read a lot of. So maybe that's someone I would throw in there. But it was weird because it didn't really blow up. The internet didn't really blow up when I was on it. So
Mhm.
it was a lot of newspapers and a lot of reading books and there's a guy, Chuck Klosterman. He's not really a sports writer. He has dabbled in sports before, but he's more like a pop culture kind of writer. I would say I read a lot of him. And I liked his style. So that's another one I'd throw in there. But it was mainly the newspaper guys, just because, again, easy access to those people.
Mhm. Is there anybody that like you still read often to this day?
Yeah, I think you have to read every day. I think you do. I think it keeps you sharp and it keeps you informed. I used to think, oh, I can't read anybody because I'll steal stuff,
Mhm.
unintentionally. But no, I read a lot of people every day. I check NBC Sports Boston every day. I read the Globe every day. I read the Athletic every day. I have a subscription to the Globe and the Athletic, so I read those two every day. Um, I do make it a point to read Mike Reese's stuff every Sunday. Um, I do make it a point to read Tom Curran's columns. It's kind of funny, right? Like you as time goes on, you kind of realize your routine without realizing it's a routine, right? Like, so there are guys whose basketball opinions I want to know, so I'll seek them out. Um, and same thing with hockey, baseball, and football. If you find a guy that you like and respect, you really gravitate towards their writing. Um, you, you know, uh, there's with hockey, there's Emily Benjamin. Emily Benjamin. Sorry, she covers the NHL for NHL.com. She was with the Globe before that. I love all of her stories, so I make it a point to whenever she has something new, it's one of the first things I do is read it. So it's kind of funny. You develop routines without developing routines. So I'd say those websites and those people are my go-tos every day or every Sunday or whenever they have a new article.
Do you prefer reading like Woj, or I see Bill Simmons as a podcast rather than read or listen to a podcast?
Yeah, I actually prefer to read, just because I rarely have an hour and a half of my day to listen to a podcast.
Mhm.
It's very rare that I have that kind of free time, where I can sit down and give that my full attention. So, and then when you half listen, you're kind of not really listening at all, I find. So I prefer reading still. I get the value in podcasts. I can do like podcast snippets. Like if it's broken up, like, hey, at 25 minutes we talk about this, and at 30 minutes we talk about this, it's like, okay, I can pick and choose where I'm going to devote my energy. But if like Zach Lowe's podcast is great, right? I rarely have time for the full hour of Zach Lowe's podcast. I just can't. I just don't have it. So I'll find places to listen to it, but I much prefer reading still. And I know that's probably on the way out soon, I would imagine, based on everything, the way we're progressing. But um, yeah, nothing beats just a good 1,200 word story. I can sit down, bang it all out in, you know, 10 minutes and get everything I need to know right then and there versus the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you become like throughout high school? Were you a fan of writing? Did it just start clicking? You started to love like writing, reading.
Yeah, I think I always liked it. I never thought I could do it though until I actually tried it. I think it was an appreciation, but sort of like, yeah, those guys are really good. I can never do that. And there are still people who I read and I say, man, I wish I could write like that. But yeah, I was always a big reader. Again, newspapers, books, whatever. I just think that it's a relaxing hobby. It's very, it's you're not on a time limit per se. Like there are books I've been reading at my apartment here, and I've been reading them for 3 years. I'm still not done. But I can pick it up and read a few chapters, and it's great. It's relaxing. It doesn't, it's not overstimulation. So, um, I've gotten into reading more, I think now than I was back then. But I was always a reader. I always liked reading. You put it in front of me, I'm gonna pick it up and sift through it and read at least a few pages. No matter the subject or if I know a lot about it or not. I think that's the idea, is you want to learn more about it, right? So um it's one of the things I really enjoy now versus being back in high school, but I always did it. Yeah.
I've heard of mixed things about this, but how important do you consider like sleeping? Like sleeping 5 hours a day would be like you need like 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, you need it. I mean, I've kind of grown to function on very little sleep, just because of the way my industry is. A lot of late nights and early mornings. For example, I'll be at the Garden until 1 or 2 a.m. if it's a big playoff game, and then the next day I got to be back at Warrior for practice at 10:30 a.m. and that means I got to leave my apartment at about 9:30 a.m. So
Mm.
realistically, you're getting 5 hours sleep if you're lucky. So um, you kind of learn to function without it, but I do think you need it because if you don't, your work suffers, your quality suffers, your ability to be the best at what you do suffers. Um, it's important. I think I think rest is important in general. That's not even doesn't even have to be sleep, but you need to be able to make time for yourself, right? That hey, it's Friday night. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm gonna do this. I gotta go. I'm gonna go play video games. I'm gonna go read a book. I'm gonna go for a walk. Like
Mm.
I think your mind has to turn off at some point. You know, but yeah, just having a healthy balance of a lifestyle, and that does include sleep, is super important because without it, you will eventually crack. You will eventually sort of slip. You don't want to. And I get it. Like I have to remind myself of that sometimes. That you have to slow down. You can't work 60 hours every week and be effective.
Mm.
So that it's necessary. You got to do it. You got to prioritize taking care of yourself. Self-care is huge, whether it's sleep or relaxing. You got to do it because without it, you're gonna lose sight of who you are. Honestly,
Mm. What are some of your favorite things to do in your free time?
I love going for walks. I live right here. I live in Medford, so I'm close to a lot of parks and pathways and what have you. So I love to put my headphones in and go for a walk, and just kind of just unwind with some music. Um, I love doing that. I love going to the movies as well. Again, just another thing where your mind just kind of, you're engrossed in what that's happening in front of you for 2 hours, and everything else is kind of just noise. So those are two of my favorite things to do. But again, when I'm just relaxing at my apartment, I'll read, I'll play video games. It's just kind of like you gotta just turn it off every now and then. Like it's kind of interesting. Like one of the things that I've found as I've gotten older here is that there's some nights you want to watch sports, other nights you're like, all right, I'm good. Like it's
Yeah, you're
so
in there.
yeah, like it's kind of like you need to find other things that give you joy and bring you balance. So for me, it's been movies and music, and just being outside. It's been tough. It's been difficult, obviously, this year to do a lot of those things. Um, but it's been. I mean, that's a huge part of who I am as a person. I think is going to the movies and listening to different music and learning more about it. Um, because I think it all correlates to how successful you are too, as a writer, as an analyst, whatever. Is the more you know about other things, the more interest you have, the more you can bring to the table in your craft as well as your personal life. So kind of it's a yin and yang. It balances everything out, right?
Yeah, it was you, man. Can you watch like the Bruins games or like taking notes, or do you just
Yeah,
watch?
I try to. It all depends how I'm covering it, right? Like,
Mm.
so if I'm at my apartment and I'm watching it on TV, I have a notepad next to me, and I'll take note of something that happened at 5 minutes and 30 seconds, great save or whatever. When I'm at the game, I try to have a notepad on my laptop open so I can kind of track things that way. But sometimes the game is moving so fast. There's people all around you. It's kind of difficult to have a fleshed out, 3 periods worth of notes when you're at the game versus being at home. So at home, I find that I have more notes than I do at the Garden itself. So that's been kind of strange, right? I've been trying to find the middle ground between having the right amount of notes versus just relying on my memory. Um, but yeah, I think you have to, there's so much that happens in a 3 hour, event that you have to take notes on things. You're going to let things slip through the cracks. And that's happened a few times. But it's all about whatever system works best for you. I know people that don't take notes at all and they can remember everything off the top of their head. And that's really impressive. But I do think that if you have a system, it probably will require you taking some notes at some point just to remind yourself of things, honestly.
How I know I see like the Bruins, the Red Sox, like big minor league systems. You constantly look like under the radar players who think could get called up in the future and be
Oh
very.
yeah. Yeah, and that the AHL is particularly tough because they play on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Typically they do 3 and 3. And typically the Bruins will play on Saturday or Sunday. So it's hard to follow it 100%. So what I do is I rely on guys I know are covering those teams, and developing friendships with those guys, and shooting them a text every now and then, or a message saying, "Hey, who's looking good down there?" And then they tell you, "Oh, so and so's playing well." You're like, "Oh, all right," and then I'll take that information and I'll ask people that I know up here in Boston who are watching them closely, guys who work for the team or whatever, and I'll say, "Hey, how's so and so doing?" And then, all right, boom, now I have a story. Now it's fleshing itself out. So that's where kind of those connections that we were talking about earlier, that's where they come into play, right? Is someone in every city who knows about X, Y, and Z, and it's helpful to you in the long run. So I try to stay on top of that. But what I really do is I really rely on the people down there that I trust and that I know cover that team, and that I know will have some insight that is valuable.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's training camps. Every training camp, you look for that guy, right? You look for that player that's going to fly under the radar, who could be worth it to a team or a potential name to watch down the road. Um, so it's kind of a mix of your own eyes, the people and then going from there. I have people who I talk to. I have a guy I talk to. He's a big prospects guy. I talked to him for an hour and a half last month about just the draft and who he likes where, and it was like, wow, I took notes for. I took notes on every name he had because it interests me, and I was like, all right, well, now I know more about these players than I did entering the day. So that part is huge, honestly, because again, there's just not enough hours in the day, right? Like you can't watch every Boston Bruins game and every Providence Bruins game live as they happen. It's just impossible. So, um, you know, knowing your own, trusting your own eyes, but also trusting those people that are watching as well, is huge for anybody.
Have you ever had any players you were so sold on that he was going to be a star and just completely busted?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think uh, we've all had that, right? Like there's been so many guys that you lose count, honestly, over the years. I definitely thought that when the Bruins drafted Joe Colborne back in like 2008, I was like, oh, he's gonna be great. He's gonna be great. Never even played a game for the Bruins. He got traded to Toronto and then to Calgary after that. Never even played a game for them, and I was so sold that he was gonna be great. And then there were guys who they drafted who I thought were gonna be nothing, and they were turned out to be pretty damn good. So I think another example of that is with the Patriots, right? Like every year we're criticizing their drafting, or we're overhyping it, saying, "Oh, this is going to be great," and it's typically the opposite, right? Like it seems like they always find these late round gems, but the high end guys kind of struggle a little bit. So, um, you know, but I think ultimately for me, the one that I was right about and that I'll always be happy about is that I always had a feeling that Torrey Krug was going to be something special for the Bruins, and sure enough, he was pretty damn good for his 7 years he was here. Um, so I'll always be happy about that, and I'll always have the egg on my face when it comes to Charlie Coyle because I didn't think he was going to be that great. And when he got here, I was like, he's okay. And then he was phenomenal. He was great. He was what they needed.
Yeah.
So you always have that kind of mixed bag. But if you can look at it, as an analyst and laugh at yourself when you get it wrong, I mean, that's going to make you more endearing, I think, to people versus if you always say you're right, you're never wrong. You know what I mean? People are going to get on you more. So I think when you are wrong, if you can admit it and have fun with it, I think it plays better than just saying, no, I was right then. I'm still right. You know what I mean?
Have you ever thought about like investing money into a certain player's card and selling them in the future?
You
I
know
see
what's
the
funny?
card difference in big.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a friend who's really into that, right? And I know nothing about it. And that's it's never appealed to me because I just know nothing about it. You know what I mean? I had baseball cards when I was a kid, but that was just because it was just cool to have a baseball card. Like it wasn't like, oh, I hope it's gonna be worth something. It was just, I was 10 years old and they were baseball cards.
Mm.
So I don't know anything about that industry. I from what I gather, it seems like it's pretty successful still. But I've never done it because I don't know anything about it. You know what I mean?
You were saying.
Yeah, like I I see how it's valuable though. You know what I'm saying? Like I can see why it's a big thing. Like I know there was a Gretzky card that just sold for some crazy amount of
Yeah,
money,
like it
like
was
a
like
Gretzky
over a
rookie.
million. Same with the Mike Trout card too. Something crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts, right? Like I mean, and think about that. I mean, some of these kids are just so lucky that they just buy a pack of cards, right? And boom, it's in there. And that's how it develops over time. But no, I never got into that field. But I have friends who are in it and still are in it. So it's pretty wild.
Would you recommend like writers to look into something like the stock market also to have like another interest?
Yeah, I would honestly, I mean, I've tried uh, delving into other financial fields just because, again, sports writing isn't going to make you millionaire unless you're Stephen A. Smith or Max Kellerman or any of these guys. So I've actually started reading about the stock market a little bit and trying to learn more about it. I know literally nothing about it, but I'm just reading more reports, reading more about it, trying to learn about anything. I guess that's sort of like what we were talking about earlier, like that reading I'll read anything.
Hmm.
And one day I just read about the stock market because there was a story because I kept seeing ads for Robinhood and I was like, what is this? I don't know what this is. So I ended up reading about it online. And now that's like, all right, cool. I might want to look into this more as I make more money or change fields, whatever I do in my life. It's like, this would help knowing a little bit about this. But I would advise anyone looking to get into sports, media, sports industry, whatever, always have other things that you're into because it's a difficult industry. It's a landscape that's always changing. So to have other interests and other things that you know about, either as a career or as a hobby, is super important because you need to have other options, right? You need to have other sort of things that interest you, get your mind racing, and you can look at it and say, I know enough about this where I could do this as a career if this doesn't work out. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, I would say to anybody, whether it's stock market, whether it's cards, whether it's home repair, whatever it is, like look into it, and if you like it, learn as much as you can about it because it never hurts to know 100 things, and be an expert at 5 of them. But yeah, you know them. So I would suggest that for anybody.
Is there do you have any specific writings of yours that like like this is my favorite writing that I've ever done?
Yeah, I wrote a story on. There was Tim Schaller. He was a Bruins player for a couple of years. He was from Merrimack, New Hampshire, and he signed with the Bruins as a hometown kid. And then I got to know his family because his brother was at every game with these big cutout heads of him. And I was like, so I asked him one day, I'm like, hey, what's the deal with this? Why is every game does someone have a picture of your head, up against the glass? He's like, oh, it's my brother. And it turned to this big long story. I wrote this big 3,000 word story on Tim Schaller and his family and his brother. I got lunch with his brother, got to know him a little bit, and that developed a friendship with me and the family and the player as well. And that was probably my favorite story I ever told in my life because I got to know his brother and got to know that his brother battled cancer, beat it, and it was more of, the story didn't mention anyone's stats at all. It didn't. It just didn't mention anyone's goals, anyone's plus minus, nothing. It was about the people involved, and I think that was really what I enjoyed writing about. And that's probably my favorite story I've ever written to this day. That or the Ryan Donato one. I wrote back for the New England Hockey Journal back in 2017. It was about him trying to make the Bruins and really being a standout player for them. Um, so those stories stick with you because there's more meat on them than your standard sort of, okay, here's why this guy sucks or here's why he's great. So I really like that part of it. And that's been something that's been a little bit. I've missed doing that. Being at 98.5 now, we're all about takes. We're all about why this guy sucks, why this team is bad, or why they're good. Really, not a lot of room for just kind of those feature stories on my website. So that part's been a little bit of a bummer. I'm going to try to bring that back, but again, it's harder when we're not meeting people in person right now.
Yeah,
But I would say those two stories, those Donato and Schaller stories, just 3,000 words about the people versus the stats, which was I think those are my favorite kind of stories to tell.
throughout your journey of writing, do you like set goals for yourself? Like, I want to do this by July or June. You said, have you ever done that?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. I've had moments where I've looked at a calendar year in front of me and saying, okay, I want to get this done by the end of the season. I want to do this. You know, for me this year, a big thing was not being known as just a hockey guy. You know, so I've embraced the challenge of writing about basketball on a more detailed level. I did it at EEI, so it's not totally foreign to me. But yeah, when I was at EEI, I said to my boss, I said, I want to do more than hockey. And that was a goal I set for myself that year. So I don't want, I want to be able to do more than just one sport. Now a lot of my goals now I find are more team oriented. I want to expand the team. I want to make it so we have our own, you know, X, Y, and Z on the website. I want to make sure that people are being taken care of and the work is being noticed by those above us. Um, so I found that my goals now have gone from personal goals to team goals with my writing staff. So um, that's been one change. But yeah, I think you always set goals for yourself because without it, I mean, what's your motivation, right? You know,
Mhm.
if you need that motivation to do anything in life and especially this career. So yeah, I my goals for myself have always been just do this to the best of my ability and never compromise myself, you know, never do something that I don't actually believe in. And so staying true has been something that's very, very important to me. And I think that at the end of the day, that's my biggest goal every year is just stay true to who I am, not to what I think is going to get me the biggest payday or, you know, help me cut someone else in line for an opportunity. It's like, I want to do this my way. And, you know, it's been pretty successful to this point. So I see no reason in changing it up.
What would be your biggest recommendation to young riders trying to become something in the sports world?
Yeah, I think you know, a few things I've said so far is find your people, right? Find the people that you can rely on and trust, and you value their insight. Um, that's a huge one. Number two is definitely learn about things that you don't know anything about. You know, if I think the more you know about everything, the more dangerous you are as a person, as an employee, and I mean that in a good way. You know, it's like if you can do three things but they hire you for this one, you're more valuable now because you know about other things, you know, and so that's important. Young writers, I think too, you got to understand that it's a process, right? You're not going to be a superstar overnight. You need to be happy with the progress that you do make year to year. I think that a lot of people that I've met in the industry who have, you know, they've come on the scene bursting, you know, and then they fade away. And it's because that they thought it was going to be easy. And it's not easy. It's just not. I mean, it's going to take you a couple of years at least to get truly going. Um, and so I think that's something that is important to realize and to be cognizant of, you know, throughout the entire process that as long as you're getting better and people are noticing that you are getting better, you're on the right path. You know, I think that people think that you got to be verified and you got to have a million followers and you got to do this, this, and that in the first year. And it's just not realistic. It's never been realistic. So I think understanding the road is huge, you know, and that process is you know, that it's like building a team, right? I mean, you're not going to go from being rebuilder to championship winner in 1 year. And it's the same thing as people. I think we have to understand that. So those are a couple of my big things that I believe in, but also I really can't stress enough how important it is to just to be multi-dimensional and multifaceted in terms of what you know and what you do, and just being willing. You know, never stop learning. Never think that okay, I'm at my point. I know everything I'm going to know. Like no, like you always have something else you can learn about. And just experience different things as well. You know, like if your dream is to be like a play-by-play guy, for example, right? Like learn about producing play-by-play. Learn about how that operation works because you know now you understand how difficult that job is, and you can take that information and you can provide insight and advice to make that person's life easier should you get that dream job. You know what I mean? So, and at the worst case scenario, now, okay, now you're able to help with that production. You know, I know people that they had dreams of being play-by-play guys, but now they produce the game and they make pretty good money, and they still get to experience a lot of the joy of that job. You know, traveling with on the road, being part of that production meeting. You know, like so. I think it's just about learning. It's about learning and taking chances as well. Apply to everything. That's another piece of advice. Apply to literally everything, because the worst that happens is they say no, and you're in the same position you were as if you didn't apply. You know what I mean? But at least you can say we tried that. You know, so I don't know. There's a lot, man. There's a lot of things that I believe that young writers can do, but I just think that, you know, honestly, it's about being authentic. It's about being willing, and it's you know, it's enjoying the process all at the same time. So if you can do those things, I swear you'll be happy, and you'll find a way to make it work, or to, at the very least, you know, you take your experiences and you parlay it into something bigger and better that brings you happiness.
What do you say about the first few years, like the most important years?
Yeah, you know, I do think they're important. I think sometimes they're overblown and how important they are. I learned more in my seventh year doing this than I did my first two.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think you learn more about the industry. You learn more about what people want, what they look for. Um, but I think that it's important in the sense that it builds the foundation of what you believe in, you know, and what you are and what you can be. Um, I think it's just you know, my first few years, I really just I observed more than I acted on, if that makes any sense. I would see how the other guys would conduct themselves and say, okay, well, I like that approach. I don't like that approach. And then I felt more comfortable in my own skin to sort of to lead more interviews, to lead more press conferences. And so it's a sliding scale, right? Development is a sliding scale. Not everyone's going to have it down in the first year, the first 2 years. But if you use those first 2 years to your advantage, again, having an open mind and listening to everything, and realizing what works and what doesn't work, it'll pay off. So I think the biggest thing is don't enter the first few years thinking you're a finished product, right? Don't look at it, say, I got to do this, this, and this. No, have some goals, but adjust your plans accordingly, right? If you find success doing this, well, maybe those goals that you had in the first year or two aren't as important now. Maybe it's finding this. So I think those first few years, it's really about finding yourself and finding your voice and going with that. So they're important, but they're not the most important, in my opinion.
Well, those are all the answers, all the questions I had. I appreciate your answers. Anything else that you want to add?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, what is it that you think you want to do? You know, out of this, do you want to be a writer? Do you want to be production? Like, what are you thinking?
Right now, like I'm trying to find out if I want to become more interested in writing or being a broadcaster. I'm trying out all the stuff possible.
Yeah.
Right,
And
see what I want to do.
you're in college now, right?
Yeah, I'm a freshman at Quinnipiac.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And how's that going? Like, in terms of like, do they have like their sports programs or anything happening right now?
Yeah, they have about two sports clubs I'm in. Then I'm also in like the school paper, writing opinion papers. Then I
Oh,
just wrote
awesome.
a piece about the women's basketball game. I'm trying to get as
Awesome.
much. Then I started on my own podcast.
Yeah,
About
no,
football.
that's great. Yeah, because that's sort of like what I was gonna say is like, is just get involved. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, and you know, build those relationships, because that's Quinnipiac is in Connecticut, right?
Yeah, it's near like what I want to do is like internship at ESPN in Bristol is like 20 minutes away from where it is.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Because that's you know, because there's ESPN there. There's also, I think there's a couple like, I think there's a couple minor league teams like sprinkled throughout the area, both hockey and I think there's some baseball teams are all around. I don't know what's happening there, but like, you know, internships and connecting with those people, like those broadcasters, those PR people, you know, that's big as well. I would also like, I mean, listen, your path is your path, but like
Mhm.
learning about PR too is it can be pretty helpful as well, just because all these teams have their own PR people, right?
Mhm.
And so if you know how to interact with them, and you can really, you know, cultivate those relationships, it's huge, because next thing you know, now you can say to the PR guy, or I think with college more SID, but you can say to them, hey, any chance I can get so and so for an interview? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. You know, and now you're finding ways to, like, you know, craft your stories, but also build these relationships as well. Um, So yeah, no, that's great though that you're involved in that already. I mean, because that's what I was gonna, that's sometimes that's the hardest part. You know what I mean? It's like getting involved. Because there's so many people who want to do it. But the fact that you're already involved is massive. That'll only, that'll only get bigger as you progress throughout your college career there. So
Yeah, my
that's
goal is
huge.
try to get an internship this summer, so I'll have enough credits to get
Mhm.
one. So I'm hoping that I'm trying to make more connections, get better at my work. Like I've become somewhere close to Kevin Pelton, who's on ESPN. Just I
Oh,
reached out
nice.
to him on Twitter, and he's always responding.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, it really is about just like taking those chances and like and reaching out to people, and you go from there. I mean, now it's like the people who I looked at as like people who I was like, oh, I can turn to them for advice. Now they're like my friends. You know what I mean? Like it's so building those relationships is huge. And honestly, like I was saying earlier, never looking at yourself and saying, okay, I'm done. This is what I want to do. Like, nah, man, you gotta like always be willing to do something different and experience things. And honestly, like writing for the school paper, but also like having interest in like the other stuff, like the broadcasting, like that's huge, man. Like if you can be like a broadcaster who's like, also I have it written on the website that we did this, like that's basically like what it is now. Like the career is you have to wear multiple hats. You know what I mean? Like you have to be
Yeah.
able to be a broadcaster and a writer and an analyst, like, and provide like some additional value. It's something else you do, whether it's podcasting or video.
Mhm.
Like it's crazy the things that you have to do now. Like I think I went from being just a writer to now on 985 we do videos. We haven't done them any because we're not at the office anymore. But like I was doing a video series. I have a podcast going. I appear on the air sometimes as like part of like representation of my work.
Mhm.
Um, now it's like okay, I 5 years ago I thought I was gonna be just a beat writer. You know what I mean? So it's totally different now than what it was. 10 years ago, and it's going to change 5 years from our conversation right now. It's going to be the other things you got to learn about. And so you're on the right path, man. It's just you got to, you don't have to figure out anything, but if you find what your focus is and what you want to do, it really sort of opens up a lot of doors, a lot of options for you for sure.
Yeah, now this semester we're trying to get into like editing videos, learning how to do it. It's something good to have, and I'm trying to get as much interviews as possible. The main guy I want now, because I sent out a ton of tweets and like July DMs to reporters asking for advice, and the guy who responded first within minutes was Jeff Passan. So I'm hoping
Oh,
to.
really?
He responded to me in like 10 minutes and sent me a long paragraph of advice.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy. I never crossed paths with him because I don't really cover baseball too much. Um, but he seems great. He's one. He went from Yahoo. Now he's at ESPN. Yeah, he's a good dude. From everything everyone's told me, and that his response alone reflects really well on him. Yeah, I'm trying to think in terms of like locally in Boston, who would be a good person to reach out to. Um, Mike Reese might be a good person, honestly. I know that he replies to people. I've never gone to him for advice. I met him when I met him at Gillette and just, said, hey, I appreciate your work. But I know he gets back to people pretty frequently, just emailers and what have you. Um,
Yeah, Reese is a nice guy. I've had his Twitter notifications on for like years now. Whenever he
oh
sends
yeah,
me, I got his notifications on.
yeah, he's great. He's accessible. Um, it's funny. I was thinking like play-by-play guys for us. Bob Sosie's a pretty nice guy. If you ever shot him a note, he'd probably get back to you.
Mhm.
I don't know Grandy. I never met him. And the Bruins play-by-play guys are a little. You don't really want to talk with them. Uh, they're a little like standoffish. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of good people in the industry. You know what I mean? Like even the ones that you think would be too big for you, we'll get back to you and we'll help you out. So just keep shooting, man. Just keep going. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, Reese, yeah.
it's the best thing you can do. And um, especially I think once the seasons wind down, I think you'll have really good luck with a lot of these people. Um, sometimes in season's kind of hard to get a hold of people.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, no, this is great, man. And honestly, anytime I give you my phone number, so anytime you have my email, obviously. So anytime you need, any advice, I don't always have the greatest advice in the world, but I'm always listening. I'm always willing to help however I can. If I can steer you the right way or whatever, and go from there.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, no
Trying
worries,
to
man.
trying to master my work as great as possible.
What's funny is I'm still trying that, and I'm on year 11 of doing this basically. So it's really just about, at the end of the day, doing stuff that you feel most comfortable with, and you feel like, okay, I did a great job with that. Is if you can win the day, you're off to a good start. You know what I mean? Because that's a problem that I think a lot of us think we can fix the world or fix our mistakes in one day or whatever, and it's just, you can't. You just got to hope you do good. You do good on that one day, and you try to build off it like building blocks. If you have 3 great days in a row, awesome. But just never look at yourself like a finished product. That's something that I think is important for a lot of people, no matter what our jobs are. It's just it's always try to get better than the day before. It's a cliche, but it's true. Because the right people will notice that. Honestly, the right people will notice that you're developing and you're building yourself into something greater than you were the day before. That's a huge part of all of this, honestly.
Yeah, big thing I'm doing in my writing is like right now I'm not the greatest writer. Like I know what I want to talk about, but wording I'm not the greatest, but I have like editors that edit it and I take a lot of notes off that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's really, if you have a great editor and a great, just someone you trust and you rely on, it makes a big difference. It really does. Because if you have an editor who just doesn't give a shit, it's like, all right, well, that didn't really help me. You know what I mean? Like they're more focused on just getting out of there, clocking in, clocking out. So if you have that person who you can rely on and really respect their opinion, it's huge. It really will help you in the long run. So, and again, I'm happy. If you ever have a question about anything stylistically, whatever, just shoot me a note and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and definitely help you however possible.
I appreciate it. Right now I'm trying to get reaching out to like so I interviewed Antonio Davis. I have a whole writing done with it, but I like couldn't submit it in my school paper because it wasn't about the school. So now
Hmm.
I'm in talks with like Raptors and Pacers blogs about uploading it for them.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. Honestly, yeah. I mean, and that's the other part of it too, right? Is like if you want to ever expand what you do beyond like the school realm, and you want to write about like the Celtics or whatever it is you want to write about, I mean, reach out to these SB Nation blogs, like these websites that they're always looking for writers, contributors, whatever the case may be, and that'll get you out there too. I started on a website called Hockey Independent. It doesn't even exist anymore, but it was a National Hockey League blog that got I got probably about like 10,000, 20,000 reads per month, but it got my name out there, and that allowed me to go to another website, which allowed me to go to another one, and so on and so forth. So get involved in the pro game if you want, you know what I mean? And just make sure you're not doing it for, for some idiot who demands you write 10 pieces a month and they give you no money for it. You know what I mean? Like, but if there's ever a website that just wants contributors, on a kind of freelance basis, go for it, man. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing, is one of the things I'm big on is don't get taken advantage of. A lot of these websites, they'll be trying to get you to like write every day, but they don't want to pay you. You know what I mean? Like, so find the right balance between, what you're doing and what you want to be doing without getting taken advantage of. You know what I'm saying? Like that's another thing that happens to the kids in the industry now a lot, and it really pisses me off because like there's so many companies out there, man, that will just take the free labor, and it's like, nah, this isn't how this is supposed to work. You know what I mean? Like, so find the right fit, but when you feel like you're comfortable enough with your craft and where you want to be, shoot that blog or that website you want to write for, shoot them an email and say, hey, I got this, and this, and I want to do this for you guys. You know what I mean? And see what they say. Again, the worst thing is they say, no, we're not adding people right now. You're in the same spot you're in. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
just take those chances, man. Definitely take them when you feel comfortable enough.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna try to do that. shortly for the summers. I want to try to get internships and stuff. Just try to get as much as I can get done because by the time I get those big internships, become as great as I can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there are places. I mean, there are affiliations here in Boston that are always taking interns. I think Nesson is always doing internships. I want to say EEI does a lot of internships as well. We don't do any at the Sports Hub for some reason. I don't know why, but we don't. I think because our staff is so small to begin with, I don't think we could even handle bringing on two more, three more people. I want to say NBC Sports Boston has a lot of internships as well. So there's a ton of opportunities here in our backyard. But obviously, if you're in Connecticut, man, you got to take that ESPN. You got a gun for that ESPN one because that's the big
Yes.
one, right? That's
That's
huge
all.
if you can get that. Yeah.
I want to build like a resume that like they haven't really seen in my age. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's a big thing, man. And if you have that experience and that willingness, it'll make a big difference for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to get like that same school experience. Like trying to in the future, I'll probably be like a beat report for one of the teams. I'm trying to get interviews, trying to get as much writing as I can. So I
Mhm.
just want to, and they and then come along the internships, be like, really has the same resume as me, same
Yeah,
work.
exactly. No, exactly. And especially, with school, if you could be like a, beat writer for any of the teams that are there. I mean, if they have a good run, boom, eyes are on you now. You know what I mean? Like that. So that's, it's a lot of it. A lot of this is being in the right place at the right time. My first year covering the Bruins, they won the Stanley Cup. You know what I mean? Like I was really fortunate that got more eyes on me than if I was a blogger for a team that finished in last place. So it's right place, right time, half the time. But if you can strike while the iron's hot, man, you'll be in a great spot. So you got the right mentality, honestly. And now it's just about, like you said, honing your craft, feeling like you're comfortable with what you're doing, and going from there.
Yeah, it's my goal. I just want to try to master everything.
Hmm.
I'm hopefully, I'm getting big into fantasy sports. That's what I'm really good at. But I want to get better at everything else. And hockey too. I don't really know. I know a lot about baseball, basketball, and football, but not the greatest with hockey. So I'm trying to learn more about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, like that's all anyone can ask for, right? It's just being well versed in everything, to a passable degree. Like you don't have to be an expert, but if you can say, okay, these are the good teams, these are the good players, and this is why this is good or this is bad. I mean, that's half the battle, right? And then the other stuff you can learn on the fly. Um, so that'll be really good stuff for you, honestly.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get as much as possible done, especially now that everything's closed down. So it's the best time to try to get work done and can't really go outside.
No, exactly. No, it's true, 100%. So, yeah, like I said, you're on the right path, man. You definitely just gotta keep pushing along and make that daily progress, that yearly progress, however you want to, look at it, and that'll be great.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
I'll
no
definitely
worries.
reach out to you for a writing that I
Yeah,
double
yeah,
check.
absolutely, man. Anything you need, just let me know, and like I said, I'll definitely help out however possible.
Thanks, man. Have a nice day.
Thanks.